What's some of the strangest requests that you've gotten by someone who's lost somebody?
Yeah. Definitely what comes to mind is I had a family that had asked if I could cut off their loved one's toe to give back to them. And I said no. And then they asked if they could cut off his toe and keep it. And I said no, because that's illegal. That's mutilation of a body. Um, so we actually had to have a service attendant stand at the casket, at the open casket, just to make sure that nobody tried to touch, or you can touch someone in a casket, but not try and take something from the casket. Um, I get questions like that actually pretty frequently. I had another family that had said, well, my loved one had a tattoo on his arm that they wanted removed, and can you laser remove it off? And I explained, no, I can't, because the skin can't handle that. That's not something that's, dead flesh can endure. And so they asked if I could just cut it off. And I said no, because once again, that is mutilation of a corpse. So we just covered it with makeup.
Why do you think someone wanted the loved one's toe?
Yeah. I think I think it's part of the grieving process, wanting something tangible to like, assure them that their loved one is actually gone. I think that's part of like the denial stage of grief. I also think that, well, I know that grief alters your brain chemistry. You're not thinking clearly, and that's just grief itself. That's not even if the death was traumatic and caused, some sort of mental state that's unstable. So I think a lot of people are trying to do their best, and I think that's just the first thing that people can think of. Like I served this one family who had lost their infant, and I got a call from the parent, and it was them saying, when can I come by and pick my baby up? And I said, well, the cremation's not done yet, so it'll still be a while. And they said, no, it's time to wash her and feed her. And I'd like to do that today. And like, it's easy for someone to be like, oh, she's crazy, but it's one of those moments where it's like they're doing their best. Maybe there's a cognitive delay that already existed, or maybe there's already a mental condition, but grief really changes all of that. And I think people are just trying their best. So while it may be a super weird request, and I might be like, wow, like, I can't believe you just asked me that. Like, I know deep down, like, you're just doing your best, you know?
Yeah, losing I've lost pets and friends, and each one is different.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can imagine like losing a baby.
I honestly, even people like that person who said that, because that parent was in a state of delusion for quite a while. That was one of many phone calls in that same, type of conversation. Um, I still think I'm like, this person is stronger than I would be in that situation. The fact that they're able to hold a conversation is better than what I would be if I were in that position. And I feel that way with people that lose their partner. I feel that way about people. Like, I can't. Like, I have a twin, and if I lost my twin, you'd have to commit me. I would not be able to even function. So the fact that I talk to these people, and even, they're not fully present, and that's okay. The fact that they're even like existing at that capacity right now is still impressive, and people need to give themselves a little bit more grace. I talk with people that are like, I forgot what day it was. I can't even think of my last name. Grief does that. Grief causes short-term memory loss. Like, people don't realize that. So like, if someone is going through grief right now, you lost somebody, whether it was yesterday, a year ago, 10 years ago, and you're still carrying that with you, and you're still beating yourself up for not moving past it, or not being at a new stage of acceptance, you need to like take a breath and give yourself some grace, because you're doing your best. It's hard. Grief like debilitates people. The fact that like you're here and you're doing your best is amazing.
Has there ever been a situation where it got a little too intense where you maybe had to call the police or something?
Yeah. 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 I was working at the medical examiner's office, and that interaction with death is always a little bit more traumatic because that's traumatic deaths. It's homicides, suicides, accidents, things like that. Somebody had fallen to their death from quite a height. Okay. So there was nothing physical left of the body. That's a really nice way to put it. Um, this person was rather young, their mid to late 20s. So parent was next of kin. And this death had occurred in the middle of the night. And so parent was notified in the middle of the night. And the next morning I showed up at work and parent was there banging on the doors. At the time we had like, and there still is like the bulletproof glass and all that stuff. But this parent was banging on the walls, banging really hard and screaming at the top of her lungs in a state of delusion that they needed to lay their hands on their child's body to resurrect them so they can go home together. Whether that was a mental state that had already existed within her or, a sense of reality that had come upon her when she got this horrific news that no parent should ever receive, I'm unsure. But I do know that we did have to call the police because this parent did try and trespass onto the premises to see her child's body, which on one hand is like, some people are like, wow, they're trying to break in. But on the other hand, it's like, I think any parent would try and see their child again if they could. Um, so did have to have police called, did have to be trespassed from government property. Um, and there had to be a very clear conversation with a professional to try and like de-escalate as much as possible. But it's one of those where like on one hand, it's really easy to be like, wow, they're crazy. I can't believe they tried to do that. But on the other hand, anybody that's been doing this for a long time knows like they're doing their best. Their best might not look like something normal or easy to witness, easy to see. It's not easy to hear. It's not easy for us to see, but like we know like they're doing their best. Yeah. So that was a
Yeah.
hard one.
Yeah, that would I'd hate to be in that position.
Yeah.
Well, in your position and the the person trying to get in because
Yeah.
what do you do? I mean, I hope I don't get so delusional that I can think I can resurrect somebody with my hands, but who knows?
Who knows? And at that point, whatever, like I said, I'm unsure if that was something already in her that grief brought upon, her, but um at that point like I all I knew for certain was that they were feeling like this unimaginable pain in this unimaginable situation. And there are so many people that are experiencing that. There are so many people. Death is everywhere. And that's something that stays with me too. All I saw was accidents. All I saw was these horrific murders, was these horrific, situations. And it's like, it's everywhere. It's so common. You don't know who around you is experiencing the worst pain of their life right now. You don't know. And I think people need to walk through earth with a little bit more kindness and a little bit more patience because the amount of people that I talk to that are just, you know, even if they've emotionally like accepted the death and gone through grief, like they still experience something truly horrific. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more understanding for that.
Yeah, you don't know what someone's going through because sometimes they people don't really open up, but
Mm,
you see like some cracks of like, hmm,
yeah. There are some people that I talk to too where maybe that death isn't even the first one they've experienced that year. I've talked to people on multiple occasions where they say, you know, this is my partner that just passed away. I lost both my parents this year too, right? And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like the fact that you're sitting here in front of me and like you're having a conversation with me is so impressive. It like my heart breaks for every family that I sit down with. My heart breaks for them. And maybe that's just cuz I'm a big empathetic gummy bear, but I truly give so much, like as much care and love as I can to each person I sit down with.
How do you determine how much to give and when it's gonna start being too much and affecting you even more than it does?
Yeah. I think it depends on how much they show me, I think. Some people have a better grasp on it than others, you know? Some people are able to, okay, these are the next steps. This is okay, I've got it. And I always tell people, like, I'm with you each step of the way. I don't expect you to remember everything I'm saying. I don't expect you to have a full understanding of what's happening, but I do want you to know, like, I'm going to be here with you throughout the whole process. And there's a lot of comfort in that families receive. And I think that, when some families, like, when they open up a bit more to me, I'm able to give them a little bit of extra care. When they tell me those things, when they tell me those stories, when they tell me, that they've experienced recent losses as well and things like that, um, I'm able to give a little bit more to them. And if I'm ever like kind of at a capacity, if that makes sense, like that compassion fatigue, um, honestly, I don't change too much. I will just kind of lean more on a professional conversation and maybe not ask as many personal questions about them or their loved one. Not in a rude way. I mean, I'm going to be honest, some morticians don't want to hear those stories. Some morticians don't, it's not that they don't care. It's just that they don't want to hear, about your loved one's entire life story or about how difficult your life is right now. Um, so when I feel like I'm at that capacity, I kind of maybe reel back the personal conversations a little bit. I still give care, I still give patience, I still give professionalism, but I'll try not to connect on as much of a personal level just to kind of protect myself for a little bit and like recharge that part of me.
What's the conversation on vacation and the dinner table like in your family?
Yeah, well, my mom loves it. She loves to hear all the stories that I have. She loves to ask, you know, if there's anything interesting that I heard about or saw. Some people like dinner parties or like get-togethers. As soon as they find out what I do, it's tell me the craziest thing you've seen or tell me the grossest thing you've seen. And I'll usually share. I'm going to be honest. I don't ever say the grossest thing I've ever seen or the craziest thing I've ever seen. I will tell a story from somewhere in the middle and base the reaction off of it because everything like I have always seen like the gore in scary movies does not bother me anymore. I've been a part of multiple autopsies. I've seen people, unfortunately, inside and out at each stage of the decay process, even down to skeletal remains. So it's like I've seen it all, I've done it all. I'm going to tell you something in the middle, of course, omitting any personal or identifying details, and let you kind of react to that, how you react to it. Um, yeah. There are some people that don't want to hear anything about it. Like I will try and keep a lot of that talk out of like if I had a day where there were particularly like sensitive, like something like an infant or a child, I usually don't talk about that with anybody. Just you never know what somebody's experienced, what maybe where their line is on things they don't want to hear. So I wait for people to ask me and I'll give something, you know, a very vague explanation of maybe what I think they want to hear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because tell me the worst thing might not be what they want. They want to hear like, "Oh, it was just this," but to
Yeah.
you, how about this? Do movies get the gore right?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So here's a TV show. If you're ever like, man, like I really want to like see that, the TV show Bones has that one's been on TV forever. It was on TNT, whatever. That one has it right. And that's because there's a really famous medical examiner that worked here in town. He has passed away since he's no longer in the industry, but he's kind of a legend. And that's Dr. Gary Telgenhoff. He's amazing. He has been what is the phrase for it? He was a consultant for Bones. And so that whole show is about finding bodies and figuring out what happened. And he consulted on that for how bodies would look in this specific scenario. Oh, if this person fell into a giant vat of chocolate and was turned into a giant chocolate bar, what would that look like? That was a real episode. And he said, this is what would happen. This is what the body would look like. And so if you ever want to see what that really looks like on a good show, Bones. There are some shows where I'm like, come on, really? Where they'll say, oh, they were in their car for weeks, and it shows them and they're just like a little bit gray. And I'm like, all right. I understand the need to not make it accurate, to be digestible for the average viewing audience. But some shows go all out, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of appreciate when it is accurate, because also goes back to that whole thing of facing death. If you see what it looks like on a TV show that, you consent to seeing, you're preparing yourself to view that, it does allow you to at least, I think, accept death a little bit easier too.
What about like The Walking Dead? Is that it's pretty comical to me that you're just like having a conversation about what you're gonna do and you're just like knocking zombies out.
Yeah. I think they're usually not too accurate. I think it would depend. That brings in a lot of conversation. Zombies is a conversation that I have with a lot of my colleagues. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm gonna stop you right there. The Walking Dead is not as important as this conversation that you're about to tell me about.
Okay. So, zombies, because there's usually a joke that happens at some point in time working on a cemetery, because I worked on a cemetery for years, of this is the worst place to be during a zombie apocalypse, right? But in reality, it's really not, because we know the specifics of how a body is buried, okay? Usually the casket is locked, for example, okay? Typically they'll lock it. There's like a key that every casket has. Most caskets have that can be locked. And then the casket is placed inside of an outer burial container, which is typically like a big concrete box that the casket will sit in, that helps prevent waterproofing, that, or helps prevent like leakage, natural moisture, things like that. Okay. And then it has, a whole bunch of 6 feet of dirt on top. So the idea that somebody could get out of a casket, get out of an outer burial container, and then climb all the way up is very unlikely. Okay. So, like, in reality, a cemetery might be one of the best places to be in during a zombie apocalypse, right? So whenever I watch those movies and I see the zombies that are like half skull, half flesh, all that stuff, my thought is they could not have come from a cemetery. That is somebody that has just recently been turned into a zombie, I guess, and that would be more of a problem of like being like a super mall, or something like that during a zombie apocalypse would be worse than a cemetery if you think about it.
So your other place of employment would be the worst.
Yeah. What other place of
No,
employment?
no,
Or
you're at your where you're
yeah.
working at the
Yeah.
funeral home.
Yeah. I mean, not too many people. There's not too many people. I think it depends how the zombie apocalypse is started. Is it something where like, oh, now all the dead are risen, like some sort of like voodoo spell, or is it like actually a virus that's transmitted? Because I think that changes things. If the dead are rising, then it's still going to be fine because they can't claw up. Like if we're talking like the mechanics of it, right? The body has deteriorated, the muscles have deteriorated. Even somebody that's embalmed still decomposes. Nothing stops the natural death process. So if everybody in a cemetery were to rise from the dead, okay, let's say that that's happening in a hypothetical situation, the number of those decedents that would be in a muscular or like skeletal condition to cause any sort of harm would be so few, right? Because the cemetery is people from like hundreds of years, sometimes, or at least decades. I'm like, at that point, most of them are just reduced to skeletal remains with some clothing. So I wouldn't be too scared. I'm getting too into it, but these are the conversations that we have. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no ligaments to move the muscles or to move the bones to cause any sort of physical harm.
Yeah, it
So,
all depends on what causes the
yeah.
outbreak or
Yeah.
the transformation
Yeah.
from death to zombie.
Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a hot topic in the funeral homes, but it's definitely every once in a while, we'll get into, I've usually had with most of my colleagues, okay, What do you want in your funeral? What funeral songs do you want played? Do you want Wind Beneath My Wings? Do you want, My Way by Frank Sinatra? Or, some people will have their silly ideas of what they want. Then we'll go into, okay, how do you feel about zombies? Just into that conversation.
It always ends up at zombies then.
Yeah. Or I like to ask people too, and this is a really niche one. Okay. This is when it comes to ashes, okay, filling an urn, or in some families' cases, scattering ashes, okay. I will always hear, yeah, we went to go scatter my loved one's ashes and the wind blew it right back in our face. We hear that a lot. It's in a lot of movies, okay. It happens to everyone. And I truthfully do think some sort of paranormal, some sort of spiritual, that's their last joke. Because everybody that tells me that, they're like, that was in their humor. That was in their sense of humor. They did it on purpose. And I believe that. That's hilarious, okay? If you think it's hilarious, I think it's hilarious. If you don't think it's hilarious, I'm so sorry you had that experience. But when it comes to filling urns, it's a lot like beach sand. Or filling urns, sometimes there's a little dust cloud. Sometimes there's a little something. Everybody that fills urns know you do not put on any chapstick before you fill urns. You usually wear a mask and gloves, but it's ashes, it's dust, it kind of gets everywhere. There is a very specific form of cannibalism that involves consuming the processed and deceased remains of a person, and that's called endocannibalism. I know. And so anytime I talk with people within my field that are, I don't like filling urns because of the whoosh, I'll usually give that fun fact. There is a name for the type of cannibalism for accidentally consuming processed dead remains. So that little bit of ashes that maybe came up when you breathed in, or those people that went to scatter ashes and it flew right back in their face, that is a very specific form of cannibalism.
And
Yes.
you're one.
And yeah.
Yeah, that's how many people do you think you've
Don't
cannibalized?
ask me that. I've filled so many urns in my life. I've been doing this for 8 years. I have filled hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of urns. And here's the thing, it doesn't happen with all of them. That little dust cloud or whatever doesn't happen with all of them. I try and be really careful. Everybody does, but that's just the nature of the consistency of the ashes, even taking the most gentle precautions, doing all of that stuff. Sometimes, you just exhale, or sometimes just a clump of the ashes will come out if you're pouring them into an urn, or, sometimes it just happens and you're like, and I'll usually say, I'm so sorry, Jerry, or something like that. It's just, I try and be as respectful as possible. We all do, of course, that's my number one goal, but sometimes that happens, and I'm going to be honest, morticians, funeral professionals, we have to have a sense of humor through it, or else we will not survive. We have to have a sense of humor. There are so many funeral home meme pages, joke pages, whatever, because this is what we need. We need to be able to laugh through it. We need to be able to talk through it, or else we will just self-destruct.
I can totally understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never at the expense of someone that passed away. It's never at the expense of the family. It's purely just laughing at
the situation.
Yeah.
This is, if it's going to happen, this is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course this would happen, or, it'll be little things like, there's one meme that when I first started really cracked me up, and it was, the gif of the girl from Jurassic Park with the spoon and the jello's moving on the spoon, and she has that shock in her face. It was that, and it said, when you realize halfway through lunch you're using the spoon that you used to fill little urns with, something like that. Of course that's never happened, but just the idea of that happening is a funny, funny thing.
Yeah, I mean, every profession has their humor,
Of course.
and why wouldn't that?
Ours is just a little bit more dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with dead bodies every day, so I mean, it's just your normal, right?
Yeah. 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 Once again, it's a desensitization, you know the word I'm trying to say, where it's a little bit more normalized with us, but it still is very profound, and we have to deal with, what we receive in a certain way, and sometimes that's humor, at the right time, at the right place, not at the expense of any person that's passed away or anybody we're serving, just sometimes at the circumstances or at the maybe something that was said, you know. Yeah.
Is there any worry about inhaling ashes that it could affect, like cause
No,
some kind of
not that I've heard
ailment?
of, not that I've heard of. It's not great because it is processed bone. So it's not like something you should be doing. That's why we still wear masks and that's why, everything. But um, yeah, I nobody's told me anything. So I'm going to assume that it's not great for you.
Maybe that's how the zombie apocalypse starts.
That's very true. Or, one joke that we always say is like, like, well, if it kills me, I'm going to end up back at work anyways. So, or I had one coworker that said she always she's going to keep coming in through the front door until she's brought in through the back. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I like another one where they're like, how are you? And I'm like, well, I'm on this side of the green, so I'm good. I'm top side today. So, as good as can be.
And I'm sure everybody's dying to see you.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Everyone is dying to see me. Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I love it, but I'm gonna do it for as long as I can. I know at some point there will probably come a time where maybe there's a better situation, a better circumstance, or I just can't emotionally take it. But I know that no matter where I go and like what I'm doing, this is always like where my heart's gonna be. This is not something that I've done casually or because it's just been a job for me. Like my heart's in this and it's been in this for a really long time. So I think whatever the future holds, like the relationships that I've built with my families, with the decedents, like that's forever gonna be with me.
Do you feel like the people that you've dealt with that have passed away, they're a part of your family too?
On some extent I do. I know more about these people than, some people that I've known for years. I know so much about these decedents, or sometimes it's just their stories stick with me and I feel like I've known them. I've done services for some of the first showgirls in Vegas. How spectacular and glamorous is that? I've done services for, nightclub owners, for singers, dancers, and like I feel like with artists specifically, like art really stays with you, or sometimes people will just share really beautiful stories with me and those stay with me. So I love when people do that. I carry them all with me. Every family I've ever served, I carry them with me.
Yeah, it'd be hard not to.
Yeah.